a Netflix original film.
The Wi-Fi isn't working.
In the event of a global communications breakdown, do the following. Stay inside.
What just happened here is happening everywhere.
Avoid strangers.
We've all been deserted.
I don't trust them.
And most importantly, do not panic. Julia Roberts.
What happens next?
Mahershala Ali.
I knew something was coming.
Leave the World Behind. Rated R. In select theaters now and on Netflix December 8th.
Today on CityCast Philly, on Sunday, pro-Palestinian protesters made a stop outside of the Israeli restaurant Goldie in the Rittenhouse neighborhood. All of this got the attention of political leaders like Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and even the White House, who called it an act of anti-Semitism. I'm speaking with a local journalist about how this all unfolded. It's Thursday, December 7th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me is Ernest Owens, editor of Eater Philly, who wrote about the protest. Hey, Ernest, welcome back to CityCast Philly.
Thank you so much for having me on again. This is a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, Ernest, let's break down some of the basics of what happened Sunday night. Can you describe the protest?
Absolutely. So on Sunday night, there was pro-Palestine protesters that were in Center City, which is near Rittenhouse. And basically, they did a citywide demonstration that was focused on calling for an end of American military aid to Israel during the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. One of the stops they made along the way was at Goldie, which is this popular Israeli-style falafel shop, which is co-owned by Michael Solomonov, who is a James Beard Award winner. One of his other restaurants, which focuses on similar cuisine, is Zahav, which has won major awards and accolades. Mm-hmm. And this is a part of this larger restaurant group that he's a part of called Cook and Solo. They're a larger restaurant group between him and another man named Stephen Cook. So there were protesters out there. They were chanting, "Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide," at the front. There were people who caught it on social media, and it went viral of them chanting outside of the restaurant. Various people online felt like it was an act of anti-Semitism because the narrative at the time was that they were targeting this restaurant because it was Jewish-owned. Solomonov is Jewish, and he also is from Israel.
So how many protesters actually showed up on Sunday?
Well, from our knowledge, we'll say a couple of dozens. It was a strong crowd. I wouldn't say hundreds, but it seemed like, at the protest overall, there were hundreds of the overall citywide protest. But this particular location, there was a couple of dozens. And to also provide context, there were no arrests made related to the incident. There was no extreme property damage, no broken windows, no broken doors. However, there was reports that there were stickers that were put on the door saying "Free Palestine" and similar language, and they were removed by the morning, and there were no reports of any other type of graffiti on the Goldie location.
Got it. Why did protesters specifically go to Goldie, though?
So this is a really good question. Initially, when I heard this, I was startled. I was like, there's a protest outside of Goldie. What's going on? And I did further digging. And what I found was that it was led by a group called the Philadelphia Free Palestine Coalition. Now, they're a diverse coalition of activists and community organizers. Some of them are actually Jewish themselves. And they've been focused on calling for a complete end to the siege on Gaza and an end to the U.S. complicity with Israel. This is the direct quote from their social media sites. Now, the reason why Goldie was specifically singled out was that in October, Solomonov announced that he was raising money for some of his restaurants, which includes Zahav, Goldie, Laser Wolf, and Kafar Restaurant or Cafe, with the interest of trying to support those injured in the Israel-Hamas war. Many people felt like because of the fact that this organization that Cook and Solo donated to, which is called Friends of United Hatzlah, that because of the fact that they're partnering with the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, but they typically function as an emergency medical support that's complementary to Magen David Adom, which is Israel's paramedic and Red Cross service. They also provide services in other countries and cities, including New York City and Florida, and in Israel. And what's also important too is that it partners with the Red Crescent, which is the Palestinian Authority's ambulance service, and operates Israeli Arab chapters in predominantly Arab towns.
Got it.
They felt like that partnership in many ways was further creating more hardship for Palestinians who were in the area. And so this was a part of a larger boycott of the restaurants. In November, there was a smaller protest outside of Laser Wolf. But because of the fact that this was recorded, that this went, pretty viral on social media, there has been this sense that, Goldie was specifically targeted for being Jewish owned. However, this was a part of a series of protests that has happened at the Cook and Solo restaurant group because of the fact that this particular restaurant group is supporting an organization that is collaborating with the IDF.
Do we know how long people were outside of Goldie on Sunday?
From what I have heard, reports say it was not the focal point of the entire protest. There was a citywide protest that extended itself from Rittenhouse to University City and beyond.
All right, we'll talk about more on the protest outside of Goldie after the break. This is CityCast Philly. What's been the response from Solomon or from the Cook and Solo group?
So they have not responded to the press. I did reach out to comment to both the company and to Michael Solomon, and they declined to comment on any of these matters. And this is not a surprise because in previous reports of issues and protests and boycotts around the restaurant, they have not responded.
Is the restaurant still open?
Yes. Monday, the next day, there was a long line of people that continue to support Goldie. There's other Goldie locations throughout the city in Fishtown and University City at the Franklin Table, which is like a campus, nearby campus dining hall at the University of Pennsylvania. The location that we're talking about on Sansom Street, that location saw long lines too following the protest. So it seems that the restaurant is continuing to get support based on what we're seeing in photos and crowd shots.
Ernest, if donations were being collected back in October, why were protesters bringing attention to these donation efforts now?
Well, they had been bringing issues to it for a while. They created in October a boycott of quote unquote Israeli food and Zionist businesses in Philly. And some of those restaurants includes, Goldie, Zahav, Laser Wolf, Dizengoff, Kafar Cafe. All 5 of those restaurants are owned by Cook and Solo, but there are also restaurants like Soraya and Mashavav and Judea Mediterranean Grill, Naf Naf Grill, and Meza. Now, they're saying that restaurants and businesses claiming to sell quote unquote Israeli food, fruits, vegetables, and products are part of an ongoing colonial campaign of stealing, appropriating, and profiting off of Palestinian food and culture. And then to be clear, there has been an ongoing debate for years about whether or not Israeli food is appropriating Palestinian food and culture. On one hand, there's been a lot of concerns from people that the boycott has targeted not just restaurants that they identify as being Zionist. There are restaurants like Soraya that is Lebanese, but it's on the list. But that lack of clarity from the coalition around the parameters of how they define a Zionist individual have left some people, left to interpret that they're mainly boycotting openly Jewish restaurants and owners and chefs, or even Israeli ones.
Ernest, it's not unusual for politicians to weigh in on local issues. So which politicians made comments?
Absolutely. Governor Josh Shapiro really kicked it off with his tweet that really created, I think, a ripple effect. And that has normally been the way of politics, especially in Pennsylvania. If the governor speaks on it, you can expect that there will be a ripple effect of others locally and even nationally that will join in the conversation.
And here's what Shapiro said. Tonight in Philly, we saw a blatant act of anti-Semitism, not a peaceful protest. A restaurant was targeted and mobbed because its owner is Jewish and Israeli. This hate and bigotry is reminiscent of a dark time in history.
Yeah, and Mondaire Jones, who is a former congressman from New York, who's now running again to get the seat back in 2024, he also added, Mike Solomonov, the owner of this restaurant, is a friend. He has spent his life trying to make the world a better place. Yet he's targeted because he's Jewish and Israeli by people claiming moral superiority. This is vile anti-Semitism. And other individuals as well. U.S. Congressman Brendan Boyle and Dwight Evans also responded. Boyle said, I can't believe I even have to say this, but targeting businesses simply because they're Jewish owned is despicable. Philadelphia stands against this sort of harassment and hate.
Also, the White House weighed in on this too. A statement from a spokesperson says it is anti-Semitic and completely unjustifiable to target restaurants that serve Israeli food over disagreements with Israeli policy. How did this get so big, Ernest?
Absolutely. And again, that's because the information was not there. Like, it's not about whether you agree with the issue or not. Like, but as a reporter, there are times I put my columnist hat on and I have opinions about things and I express them as an opinion piece. But as a reporter, I said, even if you don't agree with how these individuals carried out this demonstration, is irrelevant. If I am going to report the interpretation of it as being anti-Semitic, I should also have the responsibility as a journalist to cover the perspective of the individuals that's being accused.
That was Ernest Owens, editor of Eater Philly. Thank you so much for breaking this all down with me and for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Thank you so much for having me on as well.
We'll have a link to Ernest's full story in our show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Let us know what you think of this episode. Rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the Friday News Roundup. Bye.